Hello and welcome into another episode of the Marriage Talk podcast. Great to have you with us. Thank you for subscribing and hopefully sharing the link to the podcast with other couples that you have contact with. It's good to be with you. Bill Hobson here. Jay and Laura Laffoon are our hosts. Really, I'm just here to kind of facilitate and crack wise every once in a while. And Jay and Laura have escaped to Florida. So they are coming to us from, we'll call it their Southern Celebrate Studios. Kind of nice, right? How you guys doing?
Actually, it's the condo's desk here.
Well, close enough. I made
Yeah.
it sound a little more prestigious than
Yes.
condo
You're much
desk.
better. It's the Southern Celebrate Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, you guys are practicing something we've talked about in prior weeks, which is recharging and just kind of getting away and kind of refilling your tank a little bit, which leads us into our primary topic of conversation for today, which is about the expression of what you term as genuine love. And I will open up by asking, how does that differ from faux love?
Well, we want to start maybe by letting everyone know we're not talking about the love languages. We've had Gary Chapman on. We love him. We respect him. And that is how we give and take or receive love. What we're talking about is those ongoing opportunities to express love that is all-encompassing. It's not romantic love. It's not I love cheese pizza kind of love. It's that
it's that day in, day out,
committed to each other,
walking through this thing called marriage. And
we'll throw a little Greek in. It's actually pragma love. The word pragma is long-standing love. So that's what we're talking about here, is that long-standing love, even when life throws you, starts slinging mud at you, or you're walking through deep weeds. It's that love that will keep you together, not to quote Captain and Tennille, but
Captain.
Yeah, that dates us. But really that long-standing love, how do we keep that alive? And again, it's not the romance, it's not, although that's a part of it, but it is that commitment that we stood before God and said,
I do.
We're making a covenant here. And that's the big thing I think that we want to emphasize with this kind of love, is that our culture says that marriage is a contract.
Yeah.
And in America, to get married, you do have to sign a contract. You have to sign a marriage license. But for us, as followers of Christ, it goes much deeper than that. It is a covenant. We invited God into this thing, and he wants to be a part of this thing called marriage, and he wants to be a part of your marriage. And when you realize that you've brought God into it, boy, it changes everything.
Well, our culture kind of has conditioned us to think that relationships are disposable, and that, think about when you were in junior high school and you had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or maybe now it may even be younger than that. I can't think about that, but I like this boy today and tomorrow he does something I don't like. So
he picked his nose.
I'm not going with him anymore, and we've been conditioned to think that we can just throw away people in our lives that irritate us or we don't get along with, whether that's marriage or not. People who have come in and out of our lives, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't want you a part of my life anymore because this, that, or the other thing. And none of it's really biblical. And so that's what we're talking about. This long-standing love, day in, day out, that you're walking this thing called marriage. And there's going to be crises. There's going to be bumps in the road, but how do we continue to love?
And I'll give you the perfect example. My perfect example, it might not be for everybody, of the difference between authentic love and faux love. Faux love is what we see in Hollywood with, so-and-so and so-and-so were dating. Now they're broke up, and now he or she's dating someone else. And it's just from relationship to relationship to relationship. And there's no long-term commitment. Show me a couple who's been married for 50 years, and I will show you a couple that understands authentic love.
Yeah. Have we, as a culture, have we blended together the definition of love and like? Because it seems like we're now saying, I'm going to be with you as long as I like you. Well,
Right.
I can be downright unlikable at times, but I kind of hope my wife will still love me even during those moments when she may not like me as much. Have we kind of flipped the script on those two concepts?
I think we've actually done put three together: love, like, and lust.
Mm.
It's that I do think, I mean, it's a powerful thing, that sexual attraction that happens, and that ooey gooey liver quiver where you you have these strong feelings for this other person, and they have to do with sex. And that's why Hollywood, they bounce partner to partner to partner. And I think we have meshed all three of those together. And then, if you leave the toilet seat up, one more time, I'm calling it quits, because that's just, that's unacceptable in my book. Really? It happens. I put the toilet seat up, you put the toilet seat down. Can't we go 50-50?
And I think, like Jay was talking about earlier, yes, we have, you stood at the altar and said, I do. For better, for worse, those are the days that you're likable and unlikable. For richer, for poor, and sickness and in health till death do us part. And I think we have kind of gelled those two together, and we say, since I don't like you, I must not love you. And that's not true. There are days I'm not likable, and Jay's not like, there are days I don't like him at all.
And we've said that.
But I still love him. Yeah.
We've actually said, I don't like the way you're acting right now. I don't like it right now. And there's nothing mean about that. It's just stating the truth in love, that darling, right now you're not being a darling, you're
not very likable.
There was a really unique exercise that we watched. I say we, part of a Bible study group at my church, and we're talking about relationships and truly listening and seeing the other person, which we aren't great at as in a culture, like literally physically eye contact. And so the assignment we were given, and it was really odd because you were not allowed to sit anywhere near your spouse. So I'm sitting with another guy that I know at the church, and we didn't know what was coming assignment wise. He's like, all right, everybody pair up, and guys with guys, ladies with ladies, and nobody's going to be at their table with their spouses. Or like, okay, what are we doing here? The assignment was for 3 minutes without interruption to stare directly into the eyes of the person that you're paired with. There's no talking. It's not a try to make them laugh, with goofy faces and things. It was literally just stare and look into their eyes.
Wow.
And you don't have any other assignment except to maintain eye contact. We're not trying to you're not trying to cast a spell on somebody. You're not trying to convince them to, to go get you a donut. It's literally just, I'm making eye contact with you. And then the 3 minutes, of course, seemed like perhaps 3 days,
right?
Especially for us guys. I mean, like, what are we doing?
Yes.
And then at the end, our pastor showed a 5-minute video of a study that had been done using this exercise. And in the study, there were strangers who did it. There were married couples who did it. There were friends, and just all these different variations of relationship. But the complete stranger one was really interesting. But there was an older couple, and I'm tying this into what you just said, Jay. There was this older couple that had been married for, I think they said 55 years. And they were so cute. They looked like Disney had cast them in this role. And she's kind of giving him eyebrow raises, and he's just smiling like he has just won the biggest prize that's ever been awarded. And at the end of their time, they're asked, what were you thinking? And she says, I was thinking, I sure am glad that I married this man. And he was thinking, I cannot imagine my life with anybody else. Now, the others who were newlyweds and everybody else in the room is just wondering, did I leave the stove on? And all these different thoughts that are going through their mind. But this genuine love, in fact, in our room, everybody went, oh, it's really quite sweet. Genuine love has a staying power to it that isn't derailed by how I feel on a Thursday. or how the cookies were burned, and so now you're no longer as good as, and here comes the tension and the fighting and all that stuff. It was just a really poignant reminder of what it looks like for genuine love, and it was all because of complete silence and staring in their eyes. It went from awkward to adorable in 3 minutes.
Right.
Wow.
And that is that husband and wife were communicating in the midst of silence.
Yes. Yeah.
In a profound way that only married couples can understand. You know, when you were talking about this, what would I think about if I was staring in Laura's eyes for 3 minutes?
We'd start laughing.
We'd start giggling, that's for sure, because that's just us. But I would start thinking back on all the memories that we've made, all the wonderful memories of the places we've gone and the people we know. You know, just for example, last night we had dinner with dear friends who live here in Florida, and we've experienced that together. And it wouldn't be the same if it was just me and Danny or Laura and Betsy, but it's us with them together, and very special time. And so that communication is critical to keeping that love alive, because you know, one of the things Laura and I do is we still dream about our bucket list. You know, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? You know, what is still in the future for us as a couple? And that communication is critical.
I think there's also communication that happens in couples that have been married that long that is nonverbal communication. They just know each other so well that nonverbal communication happens. You know, across the room, you know, if we're out somewhere and it's, you know, past 9 o'clock, Jay's ready to go home. I can look at him and go, okay, I know he's ready to go home. And there doesn't have to be any words, even any hand signals. It's just I just know.
Yeah.
And it's that type of communication that, you know, you have that authentic, genuine love.
It gets derailed. We have good intentions, you know. If somebody else, let me put it in this context. If somebody came into a situation that was threatening my wife, it would be on, right? We'd be swinging. We would do anything. So we know that we don't want other people to come in and derail the expressions of genuine love, but we can have some internal battles where it actually happens from within. You know, what's the old scary movie thing, is the calls coming from inside the house?
Exactly.
It's kind of that sort of a mindset. So let's talk through some of the safeguards to not derailing what might be a pretty cool journey if you just leave it on the tracks.
There's two phrases that we use to de-escalate tension in communication. We don't always use them perfectly. We don't always use them because sometimes we're just not I'm not in the mood to use this and de-escalate right now. We want to, but you know, the first one is this: help me understand. Help me understand what you just said and what that means. Because I'm taking it one way. I know you didn't mean it that way, or I'm hoping you didn't mean it that way. So help me understand what you're trying to say. Because men and women communicate so differently, we often have to, you know, take the time out and say, help me understand this from your perspective. And then the other phrase is, do you know how blank made me feel? So whether it's what you did, what you said, what you didn't do, you know, when you didn't pick me up after work, knowing we only have one car, do you know how that made me feel? And the beautiful thing about that, to de-escalate, is there's only one of two answers. Either yes, I know how I made you feel and I'm a jerk, or no, I didn't know how that made you feel, and help me understand how you feel.
Let me just pop in here with the third possible answer, which is, honey, I was 3 under through 14. How would that work?
Then. I had to keep going.
Yes, exactly. There were priorities.
Right.
Call an Uber.
Well, you know, you guys have been around these conversations for a very long time. You've written about it. I mean, you wrote about this topic in what I think was one of your earlier books, right? The You Got a Love Concept. Have you had people come to you and say, I know that I'm supposed to, but you don't understand. He drives me nuts, or she drives me crazy. You know, the things that, again, you wouldn't allow somebody else to say about your spouse, but you have no problem uncorking it. We have some permission slip, I guess, within our relationships. maybe it's to try to get an emotional response, maybe it's to just vent some steam or whatever. But that expression of genuine love doesn't leave room for you to try to hurt your spouse, right? So that's what we sometimes try to accomplish, I guess, with our words.
We really encourage couples because what you said is exactly right. Folks come to us and say, you don't understand.
You don't understand who I'm married to.
You don't understand and fill in the blank of whatever word you want to use that I'm married to.
Yeah.
And I always just say, okay, well, you got to start becoming a butterfly collector. And they're like, what do you mean a butterfly collector? Well, there are literally tens of thousands of different kinds of butterflies in the world. But the only way you can collect them is if you're looking for them. And the only way you can change your attitude about your spouse is if you start looking for the positive qualities in your spouse and not the negative qualities. I mean, we can come up with negative quality after negative. I mean, I could give you a laundry list of things that Laura could complain about me, a laundry list. And but she doesn't focus on those most of the time. But you know, she's
a regular basis.
instead she focuses on the positive aspects of who God's made me to be. And that's what we encourage. Stop focusing on the negative, because you know, go ahead. If you get rid of this relationship, you're going to start focusing on the negative with your next relationship and the next, because that's human nature.
It's a habit you have to build into your own self, is to, you know, wake up every morning and say, no, I'm going to focus on the positive in my spouse today instead of the negative. And then there's going to be something happens that's going to be negative, and you have to stop, and you have to take that time out, and you have to go, you know what? I do see that this is negative, but I'm not going to focus on it. I'm going to look at the other side of it. I'm trying to think of an illustration, but I can't. My brain.
Tone of voice for me. I have tone of voice
That's
issues.
a good one.
And
Me too.
yeah. And it's like, you know, I don't realize I have tone of voice. My dad had tone of voice issues. But I can make Laura feel this big, you know, with my tone of voice. And most times she just lets it slide because she knows I'm not intentionally trying to do something to harm
I
her.
let it slide until he says, you know, you didn't have to speak to me that way. I said, well, did you hear what you said just before that? It's like, no. I said, well, you said it, da, 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 da. We just had this conversation last night. Well, I didn't realize I said it that way. I said, you're right. You didn't realize that you said it that way. And I didn't realize I did realize I came back at you like that, because I wanted you to understand that this is how it feels. But you have to do it in such a way that's not degrading or hurtful.
I was recently reminded that I can sound mean, and I didn't think I was, but that's how it came across, just as you were saying. And it flashed me back to 30-ish years ago at the church where we were married, and the gentleman who was in charge of the sound booth, which was basically a board less than I have in this studio, but back then it was a soundboard. But he was also a judge in real life. And so in his courtroom, you know, what's the old phrase is the no nonsense judge. By the way, I still want to meet the pro nonsense judge. But anyways, like, yeah, bring your nonsense in here. Let's have a little bit of fun. But he was a no nonsense judge. And even though I liked him a lot, and he didn't want anybody messing with his little sound booth back there. And I was playing my trumpet, and I needed the track to be up higher. And so I asked Ellen to go back there while I was practicing and just kick it up there. Oh my, that was an invasion of territory. And he kind of let her know it. And she stopped, the track stopped. I stopped practicing, and she said, "It is a good thing that I know you like me, because otherwise I would think you were just a really mean person."
Mm.
And from that point forward, as long as we knew him for the rest of his days, he was the kindest, gentlest, nicest person, especially to her, because he didn't realize
Right.
how he came across.
Yep.
And maybe there's a lesson in that for me. Maybe there's a
Yeah,
lesson in that
sure.
for our audience as well. Sometimes we don't realize we come across in a much more harsh way than we ever intended.
And I think too, we have to take into consideration, you know, your wife Ellen is a very gentle person.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
by nature, you can tell she's a very gentle person. And so those that are more gentle take harsh communication even harder
Yes.
because it's not something.
Crushes them.
Yeah, it does. And so, taking a real strong evaluation of your spouse, especially if their love language is words of affirmation and how you speak to them.
But that's what flabbergasts me, is that his love language is words of affirmation. So he wants to hear those words of affirmation, but he doesn't necessarily always speak words of affirmation. I'm like, I don't understand. But anyway, probably a better way for me to respond would be exactly like Ellen did to that gentleman, to say, it's a good thing I know that you like me, because you sounded really mean right now.
That's a really good.
Yeah,
Isn't just
because in some
bad,
in some personalities, when they get offended, they could react with anger, with harsh words, and they can get loud. And in her personality, in the way that the Lord has made her, she is that close to crying
Right.
Mhm.
during those
Right.
moments, because as Jay said, she's very gentle. In my case, I start to crank up the
Oh, yeah.
sarcasm machine. And I will tell you this, I'm going to win.
Yes.
Because I'm pretty good with words. Somebody asked me the other day, when was the last time you were in a physical fight? Like with another guy that you would just have throw haymakers and try. I'm like, I don't know, sixth grade, seventh grade.
Right.
I said I learned that I was way better at just destroying you with my words. And I don't have to get into a lot of fights. I'm fairly big, so people don't generally pick on me. But if they cross that line with some offensive statement, I'm ready to go. And I,
Right.
I don't even have to break a sweat.
Right.
Well, that's a dangerous approach to take to those moments where there's conflict. And within a marriage, I certainly I want to make sure that I'm guarding my mouth. The tongue is very powerful, as we're told in James. I don't want to take these things into a way that can deliver a bomb of words that can result in damage for a very long time.
Right.
Exactly. And sometimes irreparable damage, that scar is going to remain for a long, long, long time. Yeah. Yeah. It
Okay,
is a,
I want to tie everything back into to the book that you wrote on this whole thing. And next week we're going to talk about You Gotta Live. This week is You Gotta Love. Uh, Over the years, since that came out and since you've spoken about the concept, what have you heard from people? Is it eye-opening, or is it just a kind of a gentle reminder that, hey, you did like this person at one point? Let's kind of recalibrate and get back to those days.
yes. Science tells us very clearly that the hormone dopamine is released when you fall in love. It is a strong hormone in every human being. It is why we fall in love, and it's aptly named dopamine because we get dopey when we fall in love. Science also tells us that after about 18 months, that hormone starts to wane in human beings, unless we intentionally do something to reignite that feeling, those feelings, that romance. And I think particularly, and I'm not trying to be sexist here, but I do think women have a keener sense of that than men. That
Yes.
they understand when the romance is fading, the intention is fading, even in the way we serve our spouse by opening doors or letting them go first in the buffet line because there'll be nothing left if we go first. Those little things, they start to fade unless we intentionally act upon it. And again, that's why we're in Florida. It's not because one of the reasons is because we want to reignite that passion, that romance, that it's just the two of us and we're going to get away and get ahead. One of our huge catchphrases, get away and get ahead. And it can be just a day where you get away for a day because you can't afford childcare or whatever. Or it's just that time of your life where that's all you can do, or you can, get away for a week and enjoy vacation. But it really is a matter of reigniting that passion, that mystery, that romance that will
Because it's
fade.
just natural evolution of life, that as you go through every day and you're in this thing called marriage, and you've got your work, you've got your kids, you got your
Church.
church, you've got all the activities that kids are involved in, life becomes quite busy. and life becomes very routine.
Mm.
And when life becomes routine, then you forget those. If you haven't built these habits into your marriage, they're not going to just happen. You're not going to just one day say, hey, let's just have a cup of coffee and have conversation, because probably you don't have time. But if you built that habit into your marriage, every morning after the kids leave for school or before the kids get up, you take 10 minutes to sit down and look at each other eyeball to eyeball. That's going to be a habit that's going to change your marriage for the better. And when you start to see those habits falling by the wayside, when you start to see that, you know what, we haven't gone out on a date in a long time. We haven't had just 5 minutes to have a cup of coffee together. We haven't gotten away on a vacation in 10 years, whatever it might be. You start to see those things wane, and you begin to realize that we're just going through the motions, and we're just partners walking down this path, rather than people who are in this thing called marriage, and really working on it and being intentional with it.
Well, and what's happening is you are settling for good, or even okay, or even fine, as opposed to settling for God's best. And that's what we want in our marriage. We don't always achieve it because we're human, we're falling, but I don't want okay, I don't want fine, I don't want good, I want great. To me, when one of the worst phrases that comes to my ear is when I say, how's your marriage? And they go, it's fine. Our marriage is fine. Because that to me is like
Average.
macaroni and
Mhm.
cheese. I'm not against macaroni and cheese, but I don't want to eat it I don't want to eat it every day for the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying? I want a steak, or I want a good cut of fish, or I want the variety that God has given us an opportunity in this thing called marriage to experience his best, his joy, his peace, the fruit of the Spirit manifest in our relationship.
And we've talked a lot about communication in this expressing genuine love. And in our book, we talk about also serving each other in ways that, again, we're not talking about love languages, but if your spouse's love language is acts of service, but serving each other in those little things every day. What are the little things that you can do for your spouse?
I'll give you a perfect example. Laura does not allow me to do dishes. She's just like, that's my domain. I'm going to do the dishes. I'm like, okay. I don't allow her to gas up the car. So it's just, again, it's not, and we're not.
Allow is a weird word.
But
I do the dishes because that's one way I can serve Jay. He does the gas.
Because I can serve her.
Right.
And it's not
It's little things.
Yeah, it's just those little things that, I can honestly say, I can't remember the last time Laura put gas in the car. It's probably been 20 years. Now that's not to say that she's incapable or whatever, but that's just one of the things I like to do for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she likes to do the dishes,
So
which
really
doesn't bother me a bit.
Discovering those things in your marriage in ways that you serve each other also expresses that genuine love that you have for each other. And it may be because, I don't enjoy putting gas in the gas tank. I don't like to smell like gas, but that's okay. He does that for me. He doesn't like to do dishes, and that's okay because I can do that for him. I hate cleaning bathrooms, so he cleans the bathrooms in the house. Those little things that you do to serve each other in ways that express that love.
And another key ingredient is to respect each other. And there's a wonderful book out called Love and Respect, and we would recommend it. But I do think respect is something that goes both ways. It looks different. To respect your wife looks different than to respect your husband. And I think women need respect in different ways. For example, when our son was a budding 13-year-old, he started speaking to his mother in ways that I was not going to tolerate. And so what did I say to him? Young man, do not speak to my wife that way. You're going to what? Respect her. And so again, it looks different, but showing the respect that you deserve as a spouse. And again, speaking up for spouse. I'll never forget, Laura grew up in a home with a diabetic father. So they ate meat and potatoes every
We had
dinner.
the same 5 meals.
Yeah, that was it, because that we knew that was knew that was safe for daddy, and that's great. Well, when me, I love all sorts of food, and so she began to experiment, and I'll never forget. We had a treadmill in the basement. We had a little TV, and she would watch the Food Network, and she was starting to experiment. And we went to a
Easter brunch.
an Easter brunch potluck at our church, and she brought these little egg frittata things. And someone said, not knowing who made the frittatas, who's the gourmet cook that made these frittatas? And I just stood right up and said, that's my wife, because that is showing her respect for something that she did, and meant the world to her, because she grew up literally with 5 recipes, that they would do, and then they do hamburgers and on Saturday and go out for lunch on Sunday after church. But
and I think as wives, respecting our husbands is, unfortunately, it's dicey in our culture. You watch sitcoms and things on TV, and men just aren't respected. Men are made fun of, and they're belittled, and the caricature that's portrayed is that men are stupid. And so I think as Christian wives, we need to respect our husbands as we would, because the Lord's told us that he is the head of the house as Christ is the head of the church. And when we show that respect, we are submitting to the Lord the way that the Lord would have us submit to our husbands. And so it's a very countercultural thing to say, I respect my husband, and I respect the man that he is, and the father that he is, and the husband that he is, and I respect that he gets out and goes to work every day. And women will go, well, I go to work every day too. Yes, you're correct. But so often in our culture, we don't respect men for the role that they play in our lives.
And the final aspect of keeping this level, we've got communication, service, respect, is intimacy. And boy, howdy, does that look different
Boy, howdy.
Boy, howdy. Does that look different at different phases of life? For some, in some stages, it is sex. I mean, that is the intimacy. But even when you're young, sometimes just holding hands is incredibly intimate. Especially as you grow older, there are ways to be intimate that don't involve sex that are profound. And one of the things that Laura and I do, it's kind of kooky, but when we watch TV, which we don't watch a ton of TV, but when we watch TV, we hold hands while we're watching TV. And most nights, that's where it ends. We hold hands. Some nights, we do more than hold hands, but it is that intimacy of, we know we're here together, and we're going to end this day together, and we're going to start tomorrow together.
It's really funny because we have, from the time we were married, have had a 2-person chair. It's not a love seat. It's a 2-person chair where we would sit every night, and we could sit next to each other and hold hands and watch TV and everything. And about, we were just telling this story on one of our, in one of our email newsletters, which if your listeners want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can do that at janlaura.com. But we were just doing a video where we were talking about this habit, building these habits into your life. And we had this habit of sitting in this 2-person chair. And about a year ago, I got this, I want to do something different in the family room. I want to change the furniture around. So I rearranged the furniture so that we are no longer sitting in the 2-person chair. We have these 2 chairs with a table in between us, and we don't hold hands at night. And so we both got to a point where we're like, I don't really like that. This. So we've moved the furniture back around so that we're
much to Laura's chagrin. It's back the way it was.
We're sitting in that 2-person chair again. But it was such a habit that we had built that sitting in the chair and holding hands at night, watching whatever TV show was, even though it doesn't sound intimate, it was very intimate, and we were missing that. And so we've fixed that problem.
Well, again, it all connects us back to the idea of genuine love. Those are steps that you take when you really intend to be around, right? You want this to last, and you want to send those both overt and sometimes covert messages that I love you genuinely, it's not just hollow words that we talked about in front of a bunch of people on a day when we were all dressed up, but it's actually the foundation for our lives together. And guys probably not that great at saying that kind of thing. I'm certainly not, but maybe if our words are not always there, our actions can certainly make up for that and show in big and small ways that we're in this together. I'm not going anywhere, even if there are moments when you kind of wish I would. jayandlaura.com is the website for more information on their books, the events, the opportunities to have them come in and do some special gatherings at your church or with your group as well. And we appreciate the insight. Next week, we talk about you gotta live. This week was you gotta love. Next week, you gotta live. And we'll pick up the conversation from there. Thanks for taking part in this episode of Marriage Talk. Make sure you share the link with others in your world, and we'll talk to you next week.